Okay. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
So I have on today's podcast Amy Freidl. It's Freidl, not Freidl.
Correct.
And you are an author, a teacher, recently retired. Is that how you term yourself?
I often refer to it as runaway teacher because I'm not quite old
Runaway. I
enough.
like it.
Yeah, old enough to
And
retire. I just kind of rebranding.
a rebranded teacher.
Hmm.
And you're excited about the upcoming launch of a children's book series that we really want to dig into today.
Yeah.
So why don't you start out by telling us who are you, Amy?
Yeah. So I am recently runaway teacher. I taught middle school and high school English off and on for 22 years. Born and raised in Milwaukee, but been in a small town for a while, about 17 years now. Have three almost adult or mostly adult children, and just kind of rebranding and redefining my own story from teacher chasing a test to author and somebody who just I don't know, I kind of put my time and effort into things that I value and things that bring me joy and have purpose behind them now. So
Hmm, that is so deep and so it sounds coming from another former teacher,
yep.
sounds so rewarding and so refreshing and so life-giving.
Yes. Yes, it's been quite the journey. Even just this summer, I left at the end of May, beginning of June, whenever the year ended, and summer felt like summer break, except that I had to make some intentional choices. I used to hate Thursdays teaching. Thursdays was the worst day, and I would tell kids that's why it rhymes. Thursday is the worst day. And like the energy was just weird on Thursdays with seventh graders, and it's not quite Friday, and they've already put in 3 full days, and they just don't have any, and I just didn't like Thursdays. So this summer I'm like, I need to I need to rebrand Thursdays and started volunteering over at the Horicon Marsh on Thursdays so that I had something to look forward to and kind of give a little more life and purpose to those days, a little more positivity.
Mhm. Exactly. I mean, that's huge because as people may have heard, the life of a teacher, um, it takes a lot out of you. It
Mm-hmm.
requires a lot. And I mean, for myself, it was a passion and it was a drive, and I adored it and loved it and felt it was my calling until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And teaching is such a passion driven career that it becomes our whole identity. And so when we even entertain, like, well, what else would I do? I'm a teacher. It's all I know. We really have to do a lot of internal work and like, no, it doesn't define me as a human, as a professional. It's just part of who I am. My
Exactly.
husband laughed because he heard me rant about this one day. And then he said he was in the Walmart parking lot and he saw a license plate that said retired teacher. And he said, it really does become your identity. I would never put retired IT manager on my license plate.
It does. It
Yeah,
really does.
those passion driven jobs become your identity. And then like, well, what do you mean I should leave? What else would I do? This is all I know. And it's like, no, that's not all I know.
I have other gifts, and you are definitely developing and getting your other gifts out there. So you are in the process of
Mhm.
anticipating a book launch. Now,
Yes,
it's not your first book. Let's
correct.
put your first book off for just a little bit.
That's
Let's
fine.
talk about what your book is that I believe it launches the beginning of November, correct?
Yep, November 14th, the first book in the series comes out.
Okay.
The series is called Strong Girls Travel. And every book is focused in a different national park setting, kind of features a different part of that national park. And according to my research, there are a few small series like 2, 3, 6 book series set in national parks, like early readers or fiction series, but none of them have a girl as a main character. And so I'm looking to change that. And so in Strong Girls Travel, each book is set in a different national park with a female main character, and you kind of experience the park and life and what she learns about herself, her world, and her part in it all, but you see everything in the book through her eyes. You never actually see her because I want any reader to be able to look and experience the park and experience the lesson and experience that for themselves.
Where did you get the idea to do it that way? Did that just
Um,
come to you, or did you
well,
play around with
so
it, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I've always wanted to write children's books since I was a kid, but a lot has changed since then. Life gets in the way, and in 2021, I was part of an all girls trip out to visit my daughter, who's currently living near Glacier National Park. And so it was an all girls trip. We called our little group chat with Strong Women Travel because we were like, we can do this, we can do this. It was a friend and I and our daughters, our almost high school or adult daughters, and and I was sitting on a wall overlooking this mountain pass. I don't remember which one. My daughter would know it. In Glacier, I was sitting there with a coffee. She snagged a picture of it, which is great because then I'm like, then I have that picture. It's like, this is the moment where everything changed. And I remember sitting there overlooking this and thinking, every little girl needs to look at this and know that anything is possible.
Mm.
And that's kind of where the idea for Strong Girls Travel was born, was writing a children's book series so that you see what I see, what AJ, the main character, sees. So I go to the parks, I adventure at the parks. Life has some way of teaching a lesson while I'm there, and that lesson makes its way in. But I want any little girl, any little kid really, to be able to look at that and see what I see and experience what I experience if they can.
Does AJ have an age?
I think she's about 10. Yeah. So the primary reader I think would be 8, 7 if if they are a good reader, through 11, maybe even 12. I mean, I taught 7th grade for years, and I know that they were reading my drafts and giving me feedback and like, this is cool, this should happen, and maybe she should do this. And
Oh,
those
what a
seventh
teachable
graders
moment. I
yeah,
mean,
those 7th
wow.
graders were still very invested in AJ's story, although she had a different name at the time. AJ's story and the pictures and the illustrator, they helped vote on all of those things because the publishing industry tells me that that age is too long. And I told them years of teaching 7th grade says you're wrong.
Wow. So including your kids. Now, what grade are those kids that were directly involved in this first episode
Mm-hmm.
of AJ's travels? What grade are they in right now? Or what have you?
Now they're 8th grade, although I had, excuse me, I, over the summer, I sent the book to a lot of teacher friends for their kids to evaluate, to read, to give me feedback, to vote on the illustrator. And those were anywhere from age 5 to 6th grade. They're
Okay,
current 6th graders now. So,
that's so
yeah,
exciting. I can't wait.
yeah,
So now, as we mentioned before, this isn't your first book, though. You
correct.
actually did write something, a memoir
Yep.
previous. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So that book is called Refocus, a story of growth and self-discovery. I had wanted to write the children's book series and I felt mentally stunted. I couldn't get the story out. I couldn't get the ideas out. And I realized, I got to a point where I realized there was so much in my own head and my own heart that I needed to get on paper that had to happen first. And so there was a lot of redefining myself, refocusing my energies, that came with some physical and mental health battles a couple years ago that I just needed to get out. And so that book is part memoir, part workbook for anybody else looking to kind of redefine a current version of themselves.
And a significant part of that was weight loss too. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So I don't know how much of this you want to include, or you can, I'm
Let's
an
just
open
go with
book,
it.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sounds great.
So early 2020, pre-COVID, I was probably in the most severe depressive cycle I've ever been in.
Mhm.
Suicidal thoughts, plans. And the last night that I thought that I was going to enact my plan, I ended up going home and calling my doctor instead, because the thought of my sister and my daughters having to clean up my mess was too much. And so it gave me the motivation to call my doctor and say, I need help. And that call, which I now look back was a very brave choice to make, that got me the referral for weight loss surgery that I found out I needed, medicine to help regulate some brain things, therapy to help talk out, and figure out some coping strategies. And those are the 3 tools that I use to,
Mm.
I guess, get me stable again. So
Mhm.
in the weight loss referral, it took until December of 2020 before I had the surgery, because you have to jump through a lot of psychiatric hoops, surgery consults, therapy visits, nutritionist calls, all sorts of things before insurance will say, yes, you're a viable candidate. Let's
Mm-hmm,
use our
mm-hmm.
time and money and energy on you. And yeah, so I had gastric bypass surgery, and that was the tool I needed. Over the next year, I lost 135 pounds and worked to keep it off through hiking, through adventuring, through kayaking, through yoga, through things that I never thought my body could do before. And that's kind of where the memoir came from. Is all of a sudden I was looking, I'm like, I am this different version of myself than I was before, and
Wow.
realizing how I saw myself before and how I felt, how I perceived other people seeing me as fat girl doing, and just really kind of writing out what that looked like then and what it needs to look like now and what it can look like moving forward. And that's where the memoir Refocus came
So
from.
how
And
did you how did you I've talked to so many people who have done memoir, and
Mhm.
how did you get the idea to pair it with journaling?
So my husband was having knee replacement surgery, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and I'm just like, let me just get it all down. And I started writing it down, like all the random thoughts I had on sticky notes. And then I ended up grouping them as similar thoughts and similar ideas, and realized I really had four categories of things I had to fix and refocus in my brain. And it was just sitting there. I thought, I bet other people go through this too, with whether it's divorce or
Mm.
loss of a parent or moving, relocating, anything that kind of changes who we were before into who we are now. And I remember looking and thinking, I'm not the only person that goes through this. I wonder if the things I did to help me refocus my friendships, refocus my hobbies, refocus my mindset could help somebody else. And that's kind of where the idea came from, to talk through, here's how I had to refocus this. And oh, look, here's some workbook pages. You can walk through these steps and see if they help you too.
Wow, that sounds so fascinating, and it sounds so fresh and helpful. Like, yeah, I mean, that is really, you're not only expressing, saying, "Hey, I've been here. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what I was thinking. What do you think?"
Mm-hmm.
But you're bringing people into your experience, and you're helping them evaluate their own experience and move forward like you were able to.
Mm-hmm. And it's really the goal. And it's not going to work for every person. Every tool doesn't work for every pair of hands, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But I realized myself, like, there were four areas I really had to refocus. I had to refocus my identity, my inner dialogue, which then fed what I thought my identity was, and
Mm.
then my relationships and my activities. And so just kind of what's that metacognition, right? Thinking about how you
Thinking
think.
about thinking.
That teacher thing that we
Yep.
do with kids and they don't realize we're doing. I had to do that myself. I'm like, well, how did I get there? Oh, these are the steps I walked through, so that it was easy to make workbook pages and say, okay, these are the steps. Now you do this yourself and walk through these steps. And maybe some of the things will help somebody else work to redefine themselves. So
I mean, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds a little teachery that,
yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, I know what you're doing. It's like, but yeah, this is a very special thing. Not everybody has the tools to be able to get a memoir down and say, hey, this is how I did it. Here are some questions to ask yourself. So if you're in a similar situation, you can use what I've been through to work it through for you too.
sure.
And that, I mean, yeah, we all come to this journey, and it's almost like, you're collecting tools along the way, and nothing is wasted. Nothing we
Mm-hmm.
go through needs to be wasted. And I take a lot of comfort in that, thinking that, well, whatever's going on right now, this can be something that I access later for some reason. I may not know what that is right now, but it can potentially really help either me or a loved one of my kids, or a reader somewhere down the
Sure,
road.
absolutely. Yeah.
Have you always been? You said the book series was based. The kernel of it came from that adventure you took with a bunch of Strong Girls
Mm-hmm.
Travel,
Yep.
and you talked about in your memoir. You were talking about reframing your ideas about yourself and your mind and your activities. Have you always been a hiker and somebody who's been physically active?
No, no, I have memories as a child of like Sunday road trip, well, Sunday drives, we call them road trips. We just went maybe half hour. I don't know. It felt longer at the time. A few
You there yet?
family, yeah, exactly. A few family road trips. I remember, the exciting thing was pack what kind of sandwich you want, and that was exciting. My dad though instilled this idea of, oh well, I've never been down this road before, let's go there, and always looking
Hmm.
for wildlife, looking for hawks, looking for deer. um he didn't know he was instilling that, but that's kind of the idea that he just instilled. Sorry, there's this gnat here. That he instilled in me, which now my kids look back and they're like, Mom, that was us growing up. Like, we've never been to that park before. Let's just go to that park and explore there. So
Yeah.
looking back, I can see that there was always this little adventurous spirit, but
Yeah.
no, I did not grow up outdoorsy at all. We had a camper in Nisita. I remember a couple summers of that, but I don't know whatever became of that. So
So
I
you
did
kind of
not. Oh, go ahead.
decided to become adventuresome in terms of an
Well,
outdoors woman.
yeah, part of that was very much my oldest daughter, back in that like late 2019, early 2020 depressive cycle I was in. She actually pulled me up. She was in high school at the time. And saw what I was going through and kind of took it upon herself to do what she could to help. And I remember lying in bed, not able to get out of bed. She's like, "Come on, Mom, you need to be by water. Let's go to the Mississippi River." And I'm like, I'm not driving 3 hours to go sit by the river. She's like, "Well, you need to be by water. Let's just go and get you outside. Fine, then let's go to Lake Michigan." I don't really want to. Come on, we're going to Lake Michigan. And she literally pulled me out of bed, and drove us to Lake Michigan. And we went to a park over there. And something clicked when I was out in what I now refer to. We were at Lion's Den Gorge over north of Grafton. And we were in what I call the cedar rainforest. It's not, but it feels like it. And something clicked, and I just felt so connected. And I could finally, like, I took a deep breath and something snapped in my brain and thought, this is where you can breathe. This is where you can feel complete. And started to find motivation in getting outside and surrounding myself with trees. Um, that that kind of that took. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's so profound. You became a
yeah,
tree hugger
I
at
did.
a midlife tree hugger.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I did. And then I remember in late winter, early spring of 2021, we were we were up near Bayfield. We went up there. My girls and one of their friends, we went on a little weekend getaway. And I remember saying, I'm like, what if we were going to Big Bay State Park up there. And I said, what if I adventured like all the Wisconsin state parks? And they're like, yeah, okay, go for it. I said, what if I did it by like the end of next year? And they said, okay, that's a little crazy. And I'm like, so what I'm hearing you say is I should do it. So I worked over a year and a half to adventure at 72 Wisconsin state parks, forests, and recreational areas. And I finished it last December 28th.
Wow, you did it.
I
You
did
did
it.
it.
Yep.
72, 74.
72. Well, the chart I had 72 on it, I think, just because of the way it was laid out. There's like, I want to say, I don't even know how many parks, but it counted the forest and the recreation areas, and that was the list I had. That was the list I worked from. Um,
So
yeah,
you just kind of checked them off as you did them.
yeah, I went. So that year was very much a quantity over quality, um, and just went. I'm like, I need to adventure. I need to either kayak or hike or camp at this park so that I can, say I was
Cross it
really
off the
there, and
list.
like boots on the ground, feet in the water, something, rather than just drive through. So,
Okay, that was my next question because
yep.
the question is if I was at JFK in New York,
Hmm.
does that mean that I was in New York, or do you have to get out of the airport?
I think it depends on your standard of doing. I had,
Exactly.
yeah, I decided I needed to adventure there, so I couldn't just drive through. I had to have something there. So,
Cool. And
yep.
at what point did you so you have your memoir, you've got
Hmm.
your memoir journal notebook,
Yep.
you have AJ's adventure. When did you actually start writing AJ's first story?
I've written a couple stories of AJ's when she had a different name at the time. Um,
Mhm.
One set in Glacier, although I feel like I can't justify publishing that one yet because it's not authentic. Um,
Hmm.
I I wrote that story because that was where I first had the idea, and I thought that should be the first book. But truth be told, I hiked at Glacier, but I don't remember it enough, and I didn't take very good pictures when I was there.
Mm,
Whereas now the series has taken on an idea of I need to go with the goal of, hey, this is AJ's adventures. The pictures I take are for my illustrators' purposes.
hmm.
Um, and so this first one is actually set in Indiana Dunes. Last spring, 2022 spring, I took a road trip and hit 7 national parks with the goal of book research. What can I learn? What can I experience while I'm here? Um, so I did write a story of AJ and Glacier probably late 2021, but it's not authentic. So I guess I'm going to have to go travel there to really
Again.
make, I'm going to have to go back.
Have you already got an idea for the parks that you plan on and including in the series? Or is it
I
kind
would
of like,
love I would love to do one book for every park, although there are 8 national parks just in Alaska alone. And I can't imagine the landscape is very different.
yeah, yeah, okay.
So, so I could see like combining a couple of the parks in Alaska into one book, or just write based on the popular ones because I want it to be accessible for kids. And my illustrator made a great point when we were talking about ideas. He said it would be great if the kids can hold up the book and be like, oh, that's where I am right now. This is it. This is where we are, and to be able to
Oh, yeah.
recognize where they are based on the illustrations.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
So I can't write every book, like backwoods Alaska park that nobody ever visits because that's
uh-huh.
not attainable for kids. So,
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So
yeah.
when you thought, I'm gonna write a book about this,
Mhm.
you were a teacher, you were on an adventure. Have you always been a writer?
I'd like to think yes, but I was so critical of what I could do that I didn't write a lot. Um, there was a lot that I did in my career writing as far as lesson plans or teaching materials, booklets,
Mhm, mhm.
worksheets, slides, things like that. That my coworkers would say, "Well, Amy, you're the one good with the words. You help us reword this. What do we do?"
You're the English teacher. You get to
Yeah,
do
but
the
even
writing.
even in our team of English teachers, they were like, well, reword this, what makes sense? And I feel like I can look back now and say, oh yeah, I did have a gift for it, I could do it, but I was so critical and thought, I can't write a novel, I don't have a whole story in me and the multiple plot lines and the twists and the turns, and I can't even read a book with more than 5 characters without having to take sticky notes to remember who's who and how they're connected. And um so I didn't do it a lot, but as a child, I really wanted to be a children's book author. I thought
Did
it'd be
you?
really cool to write and illustrate my own books at the
Was
time.
there a particular book that inspired you?
I don't know. I don't know that there was, but my best friend at the time, she even said when I posted something about the book launch, she said, "I'm getting some credit," right? My childhood best friend. We actually remember sitting on her waterbed in her basement bedroom, calling up publishing companies in Milwaukee saying, "Hey, would you publish our book? We've got a great story of our friendship here. Could you just publish that?" And the receptionist was very gracious with this little 8-year-old girl calling and saying, "Honey, that's not how it works." And yeah, we
Wow.
would we would just call publishing. We're like, can you publish our book? We have a great friendship and we want to write a book about it. And yeah,
Okay, so you had some chutzpah, even as an 8-year-old girl.
a little bit. Yeah.
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 So were you did you always like did you have a journal? Did you have a diary? Were you one of those girls?
I was one of those girls. It was usually filled with boys' names. Um, but I was one of those girls. Yeah.
And was it private or did you get busted? Did somebody
Oh
read it
no, all
ever?
mine. All mine. Yeah, it had a lock on it and everything.
And oh, yes, they did. And you never lost the key?
Nope.
Do you still have your childhood journals and
No.
diaries?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I think as an adult I read through it. I'm like, this is so stupid. This is just boys' names, and angry at my parents, and I don't know that I kept it. So
Okay. Wow, that is, I mean, I have my childhood diaries.
okay.
So And yeah, boys' names. And also the thing that I always notice is just my body dysmorphia in those
Mm,
writings. I
hmm.
started writing, I think my first one I started many. I would get the ones that had like the 5 year diaries.
Oh,
And,
sure.
you know, I'd write on January 1st. And by January 7th, I was like trying to remember what happened. And so
Hmm.
those were a miserable failure. But I like just getting a notebook and writing in it when I did. But my sister, who you know, Michelle, she read all my diaries,
Oh,
and yeah, they were. I hid them, but yeah,
yes.
she knew my hiding spaces.
Yes,
So
yes.
it was
Now I appreciate the idea of diary, of journaling. Back in 2020, I started writing down just, thoughts I was going through, processes I had. And I actually, this last park trip that I took just a couple weeks ago, I didn't bring a book with me when I went backpacking because I don't know, I thought it was extra weight, or I thought, oh, I won't have time, and I regretted not having it. But I did have my journal with me that I keep
mm,
track of story ideas. And I was able to look back like 2 years and reread things that I wrote, and just to reflect on how far I've come, or be reminded of conversations that I wrote a year ago that I wanted to have with my husband that I hadn't had yet. And it was good to reread that. And I'm grateful that I'm grateful that I write now, and that I have over the last couple of years. I don't know that anything from when I was a kid would be very helpful at this point.
other than to just the other thing that I have still from when I was a kid was in middle school, Mr. I think his name was Mr. Anyway,
Hmm.
it was like when journaling, there must have been something in teachers training, getting kids to write. And so we had journals that we would
Okay.
have to turn in. If we did 7 or more pages, we got an A for that week on that particular skill. And it went progressively down. And you could, if you put something particular on the page, he would not read it. He'd just kind of, see if you made
Sure.
sense. Or if
Okay.
you were writing, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I was prolific, and I got an A+ on my journals, which was, being I loved writing in journals, and I still have that. I still
Okay.
have that particular
Oh,
notebook
sure.
that has,
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think that was probably, yeah, seventh grade,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
And I look at it now, and it's just like, now that was a weird one because you really didn't trust this, man teacher with your
Sure.
secret private
With your
personal
thoughts.
thoughts. So
Absolutely.
you would pick a topic like, the quality of lunch at our public school, and that's what I'd write about and how awful it was. And
It sounds very seventh grade-ish. Yeah. Sounds about right.
exactly. So now with your book about AJ and going on the parks, you when you write the story, are you one of those people that gets it all out? You talked about sticky notes before. Where does the editing process come in for you?
I definitely write it all out first, and then with this current, so the first book is AJ's Adventures at Indiana Dunes. I had written it all out, get it all out of my head, and then take a couple days away from it, and then I will come back and reread it out loud. And I'll find parts that don't make sense, or parts of the story I'm like, wait, how would that could not physically feasibly happen, let's change this. And get the big idea editing out of those big revisions out of the way. And then it's just kind of constantly reading it, like whenever I have time or energy or the oomph to go back and read it again. I feel like I'm constantly making changes. Even now I could read it and probably change some things, so I don't read it right now. When it's in pre-production, I'm like, nope, too late for that.
Yeah.
That's just gonna have to be it. I did hire a professional editor for this, and I wasn't going to, because I was cocky enough to think, I'm an English teacher, I know words, I'm good at this, I got this. And I'm glad that I hired a publishing coach, and my husband suggested, you don't you just at least get the validation. Then, like, if you're that good, if you got it, then get the validation, and the money is worth
Mm,
it, and whatever. And I'm
mhm.
so glad that I got out of my own way and hired the professional editor, because she had not only insights for how we write as adults and how we read dialogue as adults, is different than how kids would read dialogue. And so she had that insight because of her experience editing kids' books that I wouldn't have known. She also had some points to make as far as the perspective, the character's perspective, that I really had to look at again, give a good hard look at. I'm so glad I did that. That was money well spent, and actually completely changed the book around, the story around. It was originally from her cousin's point of view, from AJ's cousin Charlie's point of view, and now it's not. It's all from AJ's point of view. And I was jumping around before and didn't even realize it. And so I was really glad that I paid a professional to give that outsider's viewpoint. Get out
Now,
of my own.
how did you find your editor?
So I hired a publishing coach through self-publishing school, like selfpublishingschool.com or something. And they had given a list of recommended editors. And so really I just went through and looked at websites and picked who I felt, oh, I like their approach to things. And honestly, it was the second cheapest option. I was from a very budgeting standpoint, it was the second cheapest because she was available, and the cheapest wasn't available. But I'm so glad I did, and I paid extra for her to do the line edits later, and glad that I did that too. And I was pretty arrogant thinking I didn't need to, and I'm glad I did, because
And that is speaking from an English teacher. This is what you have done for, you said,
yes,
23 years. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I needed to
being a
get out of
teacher
my
isn't being an editor.
right, right, and I needed to get out of my arrogant way and realize that we all have gifts, and just because I could convey information to a seventh grader doesn't mean I can convey the right information to everybody. So
Oh, that's huge. I
yeah.
think, yeah, we all come at writing. Oh, I can write. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that happens for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear you say how much you gain from looking to an expert,
Yep.
that's really huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you were editing it, did you ever disagree with your editor about something that they recommended?
Yeah, there were a few insights that she had. Some of it was she's based in the United Kingdom, so some of it was a language barrier that she suggested one thing over another, and um, I'm like, no, actually, this is the way that it will be read here, and I'll keep it that way. And other times it was just preference. She had ideas that would read well, but it was more of a preference of like, no, I want AJ to have this specific attitude about things, so I need to keep this authentic to her character. And so there were a couple things, but not many.
Okay. Now, is AJ based on anybody in particular? Is she based on you as a child? Is she based on one of your kids? Where does
um
AJ come from?
yeah, so originally the character's name was Junie, which is a combination of my two daughters' names, Julia and Annie. However, the publishing coach that I hired, she knew that it was important for me to not have a character pictured in the illustrations,
Mhm.
because by default, I would write from little white girl's perspective, because that's just how I grew up. It's what I know. But I don't want to exclude any demographic by writing from only one person's point of view. It is important to me to not have any character in the scene, so that anybody could read and look at, see what the character is seeing.
Mhm.
But then my coach suggested, if it's important to me to not have any demographic left out by only focusing on one, that I probably shouldn't name her after a character that the literary world would recognize as little white girl by the name of Junie B. Jones.
Yeah, that's the
So
first thing that jumped into my mind. I
exactly,
mean,
yep. And so I had to do some changing, but I wanted it to be based on my girls, because they are the reason that I made that call to the doctor in the first place, the reason um, that I want any girl to be able to see that they can adventure and they can explore the world and learn from it. Um, and so we tried lots of different combinations of the names. My youngest and I, we were playing with names and rearranging letters, and um, all of a sudden my husband said, "What about AJ?" Just taking their initials, and I went, "Why didn't I think of that?
that makes so much sense.
Why didn't I think of that a long time ago?" It also happens to be my first and middle initials, also. Um, but it's really for them. So
Okay. Oh, that's great. So now you've had your book edited. It's time to think about publishing it.
Mhm.
You decided to self-publish, correct?
Yes, I've spent a lot of 20 summer 2021, summer 2022, sending query letters with the idea to publishers.
Mhm.
Probably 20 different publishers I reached out to, or agents I reached out to in query letters. And um, I finally got to the point where I could do this. I could spend, and I was only spending summer energy because as a teacher, that's all I had.
That's all the energy you have.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so I finally came to the realization this spring that I could keep spending summer energy reaching out and getting nowhere, or I could put my energy into self-publishing and get this out there. And maybe I'd be picked up along the way. I maybe.
Maybe, maybe.
But in the meantime, I can self-publish, and self-publishing is quite its own industry right now.
Mhm.
And that I can get in on that, and I can get this out there. My original goal was I just want to get this in the park stores. I just want to get this in the park stores. That's what I really want to do. And my husband actually pointed out I'm gonna reach more people with this book through bookstores and Amazon than I will at park stores, because when people are planning their trip, they're looking ahead of time. They're not stopping and getting the
Mhm.
book at the store all the time.
Right.
Getting into the national park stores is hard because you have to have a legal agreement with the government agency that runs the national parks. So he said maybe instead of the bowl for the Sunday, park stores should be the cherry on top.
Huh. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
yeah, so that's how I started looking at it and thought, okay, then I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try and get in with the park stores, but
Hmm.
that may or may not happen in or outside of my control. I don't know yet. So
Exactly. So
yeah.
when you began thinking, okay, so I'm going to self-publish this,
Mhm.
what did you do then in terms of how did you start navigating that adventure?
Yeah, I started looking on my own. I got into some Facebook groups for some children's book authors to try and glean resources from them,
Yep.
and felt so overwhelmed that I finally decided I needed to hire an expert to tell me what to do next, because I could spend the same amount of money over three times the amount of time,
Mhm.
um, making my own mistakes along the way, maybe spending more money than that. Or I could hire an expert to just say, okay, this is what you do now. Okay, this is what you do now. This is what to do next. And so that's what
Mhm.
I did. Um,
Great. And you just got a company or an agent's name or did you hire um do you hire a company or a particular person? How does that work?
Yep. So I went through selfpublishingschool.com,
Again.
and bought their children's book coaching program. And so it comes with a coach and all the resources for me to get this first book out. They really teach you how to do it. And then
Mhm.
it's actually lifetime access for all the resources that I need. So once the coach walks me through how to do it the first time, then I can just keep going. I can go back and replicate it, and I have lifetime access to all of the online resources. And I thought, well, that's pretty valuable, you know.
Okay. So yeah, we will put the resource
Sure.
to for that um in the show notes. So
Yeah.
people if they're
And there are
interested
plenty of
in checking
people
it out.
who can, yeah, and there are plenty of people who you can do it on your own.
Mhm.
I felt like I want to maximize my time.
Yep.
I wanted to use the summer while I was still getting paid my summer school checks, and still doing that to really maximize the time. And that was my choice. Not everybody does that, and that's completely
Well,
fine.
you can either utilize time to learn something new or money
Exactly.
to do something new. And it sounds like you did a little bit of both. And I
Hmm.
think a hybrid is usually the best choice because
Yep.
then yeah, you have to decide, where your dollar gets the most bang, right?
Sure.
And it sounds like that's what you were doing.
Yep.
When you then decided to self-publish,
Hmm.
that leads us kind of now into where you are now. You
Yeah.
are anticipating that publishing date and you are ramping up your marketing.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what this step in the process is
Yeah,
for you.
so at this moment, I'm recruiting members for a launch team, just people who will get a free ebook the week it launches in exchange for a review on Amazon or Goodreads. So I'm kind of doing that right now. My illustrator is using some of the drawings that he did for the book to post on his own social media accounts. Um, I'm reaching out to bookstores within an hour's radius of the park to ask if they would be willing to help
Mm,
me launch this book, because that's the group who's going to probably be the first ones to look at it. I will look locally in my own town here, but maybe they'll sell the book because I'm local, but
Right.
not a lot of people here are interested in the dunes, so um but within an hour's radius of the park, sure, I'm hoping, I'm
Hmm.
reaching
Hmm.
out to bookstores now to see if they will stock the book. um yeah,
So it looks
that's
like you're really shaking the trees around. Are you a natural extrovert? Is this easy for you? Is this something that it's like, oh, this is so much fun. This is a great part of the process.
I am enjoying it. I have no problem just picking up the phone and calling a stranger, put on my customer service voice and jump into it because I'm excited about the
Mhm.
product. I'm excited about this project.
Mhm.
I have no problem with it. The older I get, the more introverted I get. But I think I just spent a long time in middle school energy that I'm just a little burned out. So
Mhm.
that's coming back as I spend time waitressing in town, and that gives me the people fix, the adult people fix that I need. And I forget, what it's like to hang out with people my own age. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Amazing how that works.
yeah.
Yes. Do you ever find when you're out and about in the real world, as we say, and you see a middle schooler acting poorly, do you put back on that teacher vibe, or do you have you totally left that?
I don't know yet. I feel like I was losing my filter toward the end of the year, and I was very much like that one teacher who could get away with being sarcastic with the kids, and they got me. Um, Most of the time I just ignore them unless I know them or I have a relationship, personal
Connection.
relationship with the kid, then we reconnect because I still see them a lot through like community theater opportunities and
Mhm.
whatnot. But most of the time, if they're being ridiculous, I just ignore them. Not my
Because
circus, not my monkeys.
bingo. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get you. Absolutely
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
So Amy, as we're kind of getting to our time here, I would like to know what words of advice do you have for people who are like, oh, this sounds so me. This is so exciting. This is so much fun. This would be so rewarding to do something like this.
Hmm.
I'm so inspired by what I've just heard. What kinds of advice do you have for people who have an idea and just haven't gone
Yeah,
there yet?
yeah. The best thing that I did for myself this year, I did it in January. I'm not a big New Year's resolution person, but this January, I was still teaching at the time. And before I went back to school, I thought, okay, this time next year, I want my life to look different. And so I started writing down goals. By January of 2024, this is what I want my life to look like. And then I turned the page and I said, okay, in order to make that happen, what steps do I need to take to get there? And I started taking goals in 30-day chunks this year. I've always dreamed of being a paper planner person. I don't know how many times in January I buy a planner and by February I've lost it. Uh, but this is the first year ever in my life at 48 years old. This is the very first time where is it? It's right here. I am still working off the same paper planner, and it
Whoa,
is
good for
and
you.
and it has been taking goals in 30-day chunks that has been the key. And I think oftentimes, when I said, oh, someday I'd like to do this, well, it's easy to say someday. If you want it, what do you want your life to look like? What are you going to do to get there? And then I revisit those 30-day goals every single week. I spend a little time Saturday morning or Sunday morning planning out my week. I flip the page back to where I had my goals set and say, okay, what do I need to do this week to make that one goal happen? Breaking down those dreams into attainable goals has been the best thing I could have done for myself. And I don't meet the goal every single month. Things
Mhm,
come up,
mhm.
life comes up, my kids end up coming home and the month is overtaken by teenagers. It happens. Okay, didn't meet it this month, either move it to the next month, or was it important enough to meet? Nah,
Mm,
you know what, let's move on to a different goal.
yeah,
um, that has been the best thing I could have done for myself. It's easy to say, just start writing. Sure, you can start writing, you can reread it, you can, but
mhm.
deciding what I wanted my life to look like and what I was going to do to make it happen has been the best thing this year. So
And did that just kind of drop out of the heavens into your brain, or did you read a book that inspired that thought, that
um, I,
process?
I found a planner. It's called like Commit 30, and literally the entire planner is just taking goals in 30 day chunks. Like, what are you going to
Okay.
work on these 30 and it just something
It
clicked.
works.
And yep. And it's every month I revisit my goals and say, what is my goal these 30 days? And then what am I going to do to make it happen? What do I have to work into my day, into my week in order to see this goal met within the next 30 days? And
Mhm.
taking a dream is one thing. Putting it to practice is another. And that just means intentional steps,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they won't all look exactly like you think they're going to look, but you make progress still. I'm picking up, um, my September goal is finishing one project I had before the book launches. And at the time I thought the book was launching in October. So my September goal isn't quite happening, but I'm going to move it to December. It's still something I want to get done. I'm gonna move it to December, and that's okay because other things have taken precedence that I didn't expect, and that's okay.
Mm.
It's
Hmm.
not a failure. It's just a reframing how you view success.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in terms of success and writing, are you, I mean, as you're launching your first book, are you already kind of overlapping with your next book in the series?
I'm
Is that
not quite yet, between the cost of the editor, the cost of the illustrator, because the illustrations are so critical to a children's book, obviously. Um, it takes me about $1,000 to get a book into print
okay?
with the
Okay.
cost of all of that. And so that's just a tangible thing I need to, okay. So right now I'm focusing my energy into marketing this first one.
Hmm.
Um, I have an idea that I just talked to my illustrator this morning. He said, what are you thinking for the next one? I'm like, well, I've got to save up. I would like to say February. Don't know quite yet, but that's my current idea is when I
Hmm.
think I could save up the money, um, in order to make that happen. So I haven't really put my head into the next. I know what park it'll be, but
Okay.
I haven't put my head into the story yet, because
Okay.
I'll go off on rabbit trails and then I won't get back to what I need to do now. And like, this is my goal right now is market this one. That one will
Okay.
come later. I know it will come later. So
Now, when you're writing, do you like still keep a journal? Are you still writing other things? Or are you really a project kind of writer where you
very
have,
much project. Yep.
okay.
So the journal that I had with me on my last park trip, I I journaled what was happening almost daily, because it was a big personal physical challenge for me and I wanted to be able to look back at that and what I kind of overcame with that. But then the rest of the journal is book ideas,
Okay.
and the research and things about the park that I could write down. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
And I didn't ask you or this earlier, so this is a kind of an odd placement for it, but
That's
I
okay.
want to talk to you a little bit about the illustrator. Did the
Yeah.
illustrator, did you find him through that same organization, the storytellers or the,
No, I just went to Upwork for looking for freelancers who could work with my budget and match the vibe that I was looking for with these books. Um, Drew Clark is my illustrator's name. He's a freelance illustrator and graphic designer in Pennsylvania, and he has very much that vibe of the vintage national park poster look,
hmm,
that
know
appeals to
exactly
like
what
to
you're
our
talking about.
generation.
Yep.
Actually, a friend of mine, her daughter said, "Oh, I like that one because it pops and it's bright and it looks cool but older." Like, and I'm older, she's in 6th grade, and she's like, "It's still cool, but it looks like a kid's book, but it's cool." And and her mom, my girlfriend, said, "Well, it very much has that vintagey look on the cover. I like that, but I don't know if that'll appeal to kids." And her daughter said, "Well, Mom, you're the one buying it." So
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm like,
Yeah.
good point. The parents are the ones buying it. If they're drawn to it, then
Uh-huh.
it's a win-win. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with his communication, with his style, with the work that he's done here. So I'm excited to launch this for his sake too.
Oh, very cool. And now, of course, the title of this podcast is called Overcoming Writer's Block. Now, I want your 10 cents worth, but I'm expecting more of $1.50 from you because you can come at this topic from a couple of different viewpoints. You can come at it from a writer's viewpoint, you can come at it from a teacher's standpoint, you can come at it from somebody who, is an actual published author. So, what do you want to tell us about overcoming writer's block? How can people who want to get their ideas down on the page and are, for whatever reason, struggling?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to
Um,
say?
the first thing that comes to me is what I would tell kids when they're writing in school. Then don't start at the beginning, because we often get so stuck at the beginning, we don't know how it should start or how it should sound. Then start in the middle. You can always go back and add to the beginning. And I think too often we think it has to be perfect right from the start. No, it doesn't. It has to be you all the way through. And so if you start in the middle where you know you want it to go, you can always go back and add the beginning later.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, sometimes just little nuances like that, can crack it open for somebody
Mhm.
because that's not that's not the way, I don't know, life operates. We see,
Right.
the movies and the books, we see everything starting at the beginning. So we
Yeah.
assume that's where everything starts is at the beginning.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and
okay.
this memoir that I wrote, Refocus, this I started in the middle, and then just went back. I'm like, oh, actually, this would work this way instead. This would work as a journal kind of a book. And yeah,
Hmm.
start in the middle.
Oh, Amy, this has been so much fun talking to you. Why don't
Thank you
you
so much.
where are the places that you are most easily found for people that are interested in contacting you or checking out your journal memoir, checking out your progress on what's happening with AJ these
Sure.
days?
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So Strong Girls Travel has an online energy going on already. Stronggirlstravel.com. There's an author page on there, but there's also I've through Facebook and some different venues, I've been interviewing women who are doing brave, intimidating things and traveling outside of their box. So most Mondays, I have an article that comes up with some woman who's doing some brave, intimidating thing. Stronggirlstravel.com. Strong Girls Travel is on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And I don't know what I'm doing on TikTok, but
Ooh, are
but
you
if
a dancer?
no, no, I'm more of an awkward, no filter, mama, take what you get kind of a storyteller.
Cool. The world needs those too. Yes.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Good. Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
Amy, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that your book is going to blow up and do wonderful and unforeseen wonderful things in the world. So
Thank you very much. I'm excited to get
congratulations
this
and
one
all the
going. So
best.
thank you.
Cool.